What if the supply line every strategist insisted was untouchable vanished in a single night? Imagine the unimaginable. A logistical artery, the sort that underpins entire military doctrines, suddenly erased from the map. This is not just a hypothetical exercise. It is the scenario that unfolded in the early hours of August 26, 2025, when war itself changed forever. Before the sun could breach the Carpathian peaks, a catastrophic strike obliterated the Carpathian Tunnel, Ukraine's essential logistics artery, once thought invincible. This was not a routine bombardment, nor a lucky shot. It was a surgical, overwhelming blow, executed with chilling precision, that shattered the illusion of safety for even the most fortified routes. The reverberations from this single act would echo across continents, rewriting the playbook of modern warfare. To understand the enormity of this event, consider how, throughout history, certain supply lines have been lifelines for embattled nations. During the Second World War, the Burma Road was a vital conduit for Allied aid to China. When Japanese forces managed to isolate it, the consequences were immediate and dire. Supplies slowed to a trickle, morale plummeted, and entire campaigns teetered on the brink. The destruction of the Carpathian Tunnel was such a moment, only this time, the tools were satellites, drones, and hypersonic missiles, not infantry and dynamite. The Carpathian Tunnel had long symbolized the unbreakable lifeline between Ukraine and its Western allies. Burrowed deep beneath ancient mountains, armored with cutting-edge security, and wrapped in secrecy, it was the stuff of both legend and necessity. Western advisors, haunted by the lessons of history from Verdun to Stalingrad, had poured resources into its defense. For years, it seemed immune to attack, a modern-day Maginot Line for logistics. Yet, with one orchestrated assault, that certainty evaporated, along with the vital corridor funneling weapons, fuel, and hope to the front. Within minutes, the tunnel was reduced to rubble, its steel veins twisted, its railways buried. Convoys loaded with equipment vanished under stone. The message from Moscow was unmistakable. No lifeline, no matter how secret or fortified, was beyond reach. The world was forced to reckon with a new reality. Moscow's message was not lost in translation. It was clear, direct, and chilling. Any nation aiding strikes on Russian interests could suffer the same fate. The warning spread like wildfire, reaching far beyond Ukraine's borders and rattling military planners across Europe, North America, and Asia. In embassies and war rooms from Warsaw to Washington, strategists pored over maps, redrawing lines and rethinking assumptions that had held for decades. In mere hours, Ukraine's logistics ground to a halt. Trains carrying desperately needed armor and ammunition froze in place, trapped by collapsed stone and twisted track. Backup routes, once mapped with confidence, proved too narrow, too slow, or dangerously exposed to sabotage. Trucks that tried to skirt through mountain passes became easy targets for drones. The entire supply network, arguably the true backbone of modern war, was paralyzed, and the consequences were immediate. News of the strike raced westward. Kyiv, Brussels, and Washington erupted in alarm. Leaders scrambled to reassess the security of their own infrastructure. If a lifeline as secure as the Carpathian Tunnel could be destroyed overnight, what, if anything, was truly safe? The question hung in the air like the smoke still rising from the mountains. The risk was now impossible to ignore. If secure supply lines cannot be guaranteed, entire strategies, and the lives entwined with them, hang by a thread. The new battlefield is not marked by trenches and ruined towns, but by the invisible veins of supply and support, where a single strike can decide the fate of nations. This was not the first time logistics had proved decisive. Consider how Napoleon's Grande Armée withered in the Russian winter, cut off from supply. Yet never before had the vulnerability of infrastructure been so stark, so immediate, and so global. To grasp just how profoundly this attack shattered military doctrine, and what new rules of conflict are being forged, we must examine what happened that night, and why it rewrites the future of war. The Carpathian Tunnel's destruction was no accident. It was the result of meticulous planning, advanced surveillance, and stealthy precision. To unravel its impact, we must first explore how the tunnel became the beating heart of Ukraine's war effort, and why its loss reverberated so powerfully. Why did the Carpathian Tunnel matter so profoundly? And why did its destruction send shockwaves far beyond the battlefield? The answer lies in the very nature of modern conflict. Hidden beneath the brooding Carpathian Mountains, the tunnel was not merely a passage through ancient stone. For months, it had been the silent artery of Ukraine's war effort, a shadow route through which hope literally traveled. Trains loaded with heavy weapons, fuel, and life-saving equipment vanished into the darkness on one side and reappeared, undetected, near the front lines on the other. Its secrecy was legendary. Only a handful of elite engineers and military strategists grasped the tunnel's true value. Western partners guarded its existence fiercely, constantly upgrading security and encryption to keep any adversary guessing. For them, this route was not just useful, it was essential. If the tunnel fell, so might the entire supply chain to Ukraine's defenders. In many ways, it was the Ukrainian equivalent of the Ho Chi Minh Trail during the Vietnam War, a lifeline that, if severed, could doom the cause. Russia understood this perfectly. Its intelligence services tracked the relentless flow of Western aid, slowly tightening the net around the tunnel. Moscow saw it as the beating heart of Ukrainian resistance. Cut the artery, and the body would falter. The strategy was reminiscent of the German focus on Allied shipping lanes during the Battle of the Atlantic, where U-boats sought to choke Britain into submission by targeting the flow of supplies. President Putin made the stakes unmistakable. He issued a stark warning. Every new surge of Western support would provoke a devastating Russian response. No target was off limits, not just soldiers or tanks, but the very veins of the war machine, hidden deep behind the lines. This was more than saber-rattling. It was a chilling shift in the rules. It echoed the doctrine of total war, where civilian and military infrastructure alike become legitimate targets, as seen in the strategic bombings of Dresden or Tokyo. Then, on the night of August 26, 2025, the threat became action. Russian drones and satellites detected unusual activity near the tunnel, heightened patrols, encrypted radio chatter, a pulse of urgency. Within hours, a storm of missiles and drones rained down with surgical accuracy. The tunnel collapsed in thunder and flame, burying not just steel and stone, but months of painstaking planning. The technical details of the attack revealed the future of warfare. Waves of decoy drones confused Ukraine's air defenses, drawing fire and exposing radar positions. Electronic jamming scrambled communications, blinding command posts. Then, hypersonic missiles, traveling at speeds that made interception nearly impossible, struck with pinpoint accuracy. The result was total devastation. The tunnel's entrances crumbled, internal supports collapsed, and fires raged unchecked for hours. In modern war, logistics are survival. Lose a critical route, and the front can unravel in days. Every delay, every destroyed bridge or tunnel, multiplies the risk of collapse. What once seemed secure is now a glaring weakness, exploited for all to see. The fate of the German Sixth Army at Stalingrad, a force starved of supplies, encircled, and ultimately destroyed, serves as a haunting reminder of what happens when logistics fail. Yet the attack on the Carpathian Tunnel was only the opening salvo. Both sides, jolted by the strike, now faced an urgent reckoning. Adapt or risk annihilation in a conflict where supply lines are as precious as territory. The fallout from the tunnel's destruction would ripple across military commands, political capitals, and even global markets. The war's next phase promised new dangers and demanded new strategies. When old defenses collapse, what becomes of an army and a nation when its lifelines are severed almost overnight? Within mere hours of the Carpathian Tunnel attack, Russian forces shifted to an entirely new mode of warfare. This was no wild bombardment. It was methodical, deliberate. The first blow was aimed at Ukraine's eyes and ears. Waves of drone decoys flooded the skies, while layers of electronic jamming crippled radar, blinding air defenses and sowing chaos on every screen. with sensors dark and command uncertain, the next strikes landed with chilling precision. Missiles hammered airfields, supply depots, and sprawling railway junctions, each hit meticulously chosen to strangle the flow of weapons and fuel. What was once a robust logistical network became a battlefield in its own right, under constant calculated assault. Imagine the scenes. Engineers racing to repair tracks by flashlight, only to be forced to scatter as another barrage descends. Fuel trucks weaving through backroads, each stop a potential death sentence. Western air defense systems faced their sternest challenge yet. Even the most advanced Patriot batteries were stretched thin, their launchers and radars overwhelmed by swarms of drones and a cascade of missiles. The old doctrines, layered defense, centralized supply, were unraveling under the weight of this onslaught. For Ukraine's soldiers, the consequences were instant and unforgiving. Deliveries of heavy equipment slowed to a crawl. Journeys that once took 2 days dragged out to 6, 7, even 8, an eternity at the front. Hasty alternative routes, winding through narrow roads and battered bridges, could not move tanks or artillery in bulk. The army's arteries were clogging, hour by hour. Meanwhile, Russian satellites and ever-present drones tracked every movement. Any attempt to repair a rail line or refuel a convoy was spotted and targeted, often within minutes. Secrecy was nearly impossible. Each act of recovery risked drawing a fresh barrage from above. The stakes only grew clearer on the ground. Ammunition was rationed, fuel stockpiled in fear, and the specter of delay gnawed at morale. Commanders warned, an army cut off from steady resupply risks not just losing equipment, but cohesion and the will to keep fighting. Across Ukraine, and in capital cities far beyond, shockwaves spread rapidly. The message was unambiguous. Survival now depended on improvisation, adaptation, and decentralized supply. The age of abundant, uninterrupted support had ended. International response was swift, but the future was clouded with uncertainty. Could Ukraine's allies move fast enough, or would the ripple effects of this logistical crisis reach far beyond the battlefield, threatening the stability of the region itself? The world had seen similar shocks before. During the Arab-Israeli wars, the destruction of bridges and supply depots often shifted the balance of power in days. Now, the stakes were even higher. As Ukrainian commanders scrambled for answers, new improvisations and desperate gambits emerged. The next phase of the conflict would test not just weaponry, but ingenuity and resolve on every front. If nowhere is safe, what must armies and nations do to survive in this new era? The August 26, 2025 attack on the Carpathian tunnel shattered more than just concrete and steel. In a matter of hours, Ukraine's high command was forced to abandon old playbooks. Orders went out to fragment their air defenses, reroute supply lines, and improvise new fuel and arms depots, each decision made in the shadow of the next possible strike. Western advisors scrambled alongside them. In hastily convened calls, they debated how to harden Ukraine's logistics, testing ideas for secure corridors and decentralized networks. The aim was simple, but daunting. Keep the flow of ammunition, fuel, and equipment alive, even as the enemy turned every rail, bridge, and highway into a target. Across the battered countryside, temporary bridges and backup rail spurs appeared overnight. Mobile anti-aircraft batteries repositioned constantly, knowing that their camouflage and speed were now the only shields for supply convoys once considered untouchable. Yet, for every mile of track repaired, another bottleneck loomed. Restoring a damaged transport hub was the work of weeks or months, not days, and each hour lost weakened the front. The situation echoed the Allied efforts to rebuild bridges over the Rhine in World War II, where engineers worked around the clock under fire, knowing that every delay cost lives. Every delay tipped the scales. Each day without resupply gave the enemy a new opportunity, shifting momentum and exposing fresh vulnerabilities. The war had become a contest not just of territory, but of adaptation and concealment. Only those who innovated fastest, scattering resources, masking movements, and responding in real time, could hope to seize the advantage. Meanwhile, unease spread across Europe. In Warsaw, Berlin, Paris, and beyond, public anxiety grew. The specter of escalation, energy shortages, and economic disruption haunted every political debate. Each shock to Ukraine's supply chain sent ripples through fuel markets and transport corridors, rattling confidence far from the battlefield. The memory of the oil shocks of the 1970s, when conflicts in the Middle East sent global prices soaring and triggered recessions, was never far from anyone's mind. Analysts warned, the next phase of this war belongs to those who reinvent logistics and keep adversaries guessing. Delay or hesitation risked not only military defeat, but political upheaval and spiraling instability across the continent. No government could afford the illusion of safety. Now, with infrastructure itself the front line, new lessons must be learned. Militaries, governments, and societies must adapt, or else risk falling prey to a war where every bridge, rail, and data cable is a target. The rules have changed, and only those who move first will stand a chance. But as the dust settled over the Carpathian tunnel, another question emerged. Could Ukraine's rapid adaptations truly outpace the threat? Or was the enemy already planning its next strike on an even more vital artery? The most advanced militaries no longer rely solely on overwhelming firepower. Instead, they invest in speed, stealth, and the ability to shift strategy in an instant. The Carpathian tunnel attack forced a painful reckoning. Massive centralized supply chains are now glaring targets. Survival depends on breaking up resources, using nimble, unpredictable routes, and improvising under pressure. Modern conflict favors those who can move faster than the enemy. Mobile air defenses relocate before detection. Electronic warfare teams scramble signals, blinding enemy missiles. Commanders, armed with live intelligence, redirect convoys before disaster strikes. Yet, the challenge extends beyond the battlefield. Bridges, tunnels, and power grids must not only resist attack, but also be repaired at lightning speed. Any overlooked weakness can trigger catastrophe. Political leaders face a gauntlet. They must calm public fears, absorb soaring costs, and maintain key alliances, all while treating logistics as a matter of survival, not just efficiency. The consequences ripple far from the front lines. Disrupted supply chains inflate food and energy prices, unsettle markets, and disrupt the lives of millions, even in distant lands. Failing to adapt is no longer just a military risk. The price includes economic turmoil and permanent scars to national prestige. To illustrate, consider the havoc caused by a single blockage in the Suez Canal in 2021, when the Ever Given container ship ran aground. In just 6 days, global trade was thrown into disarray, costing billions and reminding the world of the fragility of complex systems. Now, multiply that by the chaos of deliberate, targeted strikes, and the stakes become existential. The lesson is stark. In this era, infrastructure decides fate. Today's decisions will echo for generations, shaping victory, defeat, and the very fabric of society. But with every adaptation, new vulnerabilities emerge. The coming escalation will test not only military resolve, but the resilience of entire nations. How then should nations respond? The answer lies in a mix of concrete measures and creative thinking. Governments must invest in redundancy, building multiple independent routes for critical supplies, both physical and digital. Military planners must embrace deception, using decoys, camouflage, and misinformation to mislead attackers. Civil engineers must design infrastructure with rapid repair in mind, stockpiling materials and training crews for round-the-clock response. On a practical level, armies can pre-position supplies in dispersed caches, rotate routes frequently, and integrate civilian transport networks into military planning. Alliances must deepen, enabling rapid cross-border support. Public communication must be honest and resilient, preparing societies for the inevitability of disruptions and rallying them to respond with unity rather than panic. International organizations, too, have a role. NATO, for instance, could coordinate multinational exercises focused on infrastructure defense, cyber resilience, and large-scale emergency logistics. The European Union might invest in cross-border rail and energy connectors, reducing the impact of any single point of failure. Business leaders, recognizing the risks, could diversify suppliers and invest in backup systems. The challenge, in short, is to make societies as agile and adaptable as the adversaries they face. History is filled with examples, like the British response to the Blitz, when Londoners moved underground and supply routes were rerouted nightly, or the American Red Ball Express in World War II, which kept Patton's tanks fueled by sheer speed and improvisation. The same spirit is needed now, but on a global scale and with 21st century technology. Who emerges victorious in a war where supply chains, not soldiers, are the main targets? After the thunder of rockets fades into the Carpathian mist, one truth stands clear. The rules of conflict have changed. No longer is warfare confined to visible front lines. The true battles now unfold along unseen arteries, railways, tunnels, and power lines that keep armies, economies, and entire societies alive. The attack on Ukraine's Carpathian Tunnel on August 26, 2025, did more than crumble concrete and twist steel. It shattered the myth that any logistics route, no matter how secret or shielded, can ever be truly safe. This was not just a strike against infrastructure. It was a warning echoing across continents: adapt or risk catastrophic loss. The world watched as precision weapons slipped past conventional defenses and crippled the lifelines sustaining whole military campaigns. Within hours, supply convoys stalled, ammunition ran low, and commanders faced choices no handbook could solve. The old strategies, built on static routes and centralized depots, were suddenly revealed as fatal vulnerabilities. This shift does not only matter to generals and politicians, it matters to nations, to markets, and to you. When a single, well-placed attack can sever trade routes or plunge regions into darkness, global stability teeters. What seems like a distant flash of war can ripple outward, disrupting supply chains, spiking prices, and intruding into daily routines. The COVID-19 pandemic offered a preview. Disruptions in one part of the world quickly led to empty shelves and soaring costs everywhere. Now, imagine such disruption, not by accident, but by design. If we cling to outdated ideas of war, focused on territory, trenches, and visible maneuvers, we miss the silent battles that decide everything. The true winners will be those who decentralize, innovate, and defend their networks at every link, anticipating threats that move faster than any army. So ask yourself, are we, our leaders, our systems, our communities, ready for this new era? Or are we still trusting in habits and structures an adversary has already learned to bypass? To ignore this transformation is to gamble with national strength, economic stability, and the credibility of leadership itself. The victors in tomorrow's wars will not always be those with the largest arsenals, but those who can keep their lifelines intact when the world's eyes turn to crisis. Victory now depends not just on what happens on the battlefield, but on our ability to protect what keeps us supplied, connected, and alive. In the end, the question remains: who will adapt before the next strike falls? Will we heed the lessons of the Carpathian Tunnel, or will we wait until the next artery is severed? The future belongs to those who can answer, not just with words, but with action.